We'll wait until now. So,
Okay.
welcome, Mitch. Thank you for coming on. So, what do you do?
So I help investors, and for the sake of this discussion, let's use the term operators because that'll help later on when we're talking about different types of investors. But I help rehabbers, landlords, real estate investors, rental property investors who are looking to scale their operation, who are looking to use greater access to capital to build their business. I help them get that access to capital, specifically private capital,
Hmm.
so that we can help them grow. And that's what I do for a living. I love what I do, and I've been doing it specifically for this community for about 5 years, but I've been using it myself for 26 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you provide private funding for real estate investors, and then you are also using private funding in your endeavors.
So, yeah, my wife and I got started investing in 1999,
Mhm.
back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And we did this in Atlanta. And from our very first deal till now, we have never gone to a bank to borrow money to buy investment property. It's either been some combination of seller finance, subject to, or private money. So we've only used those resources to further our investment goals. And I just assumed, well, I knew better, but I didn't know why more people weren't doing this. But I knew
Mhm.
most people were not accessing private money. And so about 5 years ago, I started helping other investors, operators to get access to this because it is so much better than going through banks or
Mhm.
even hard money. So I've been trying to help people access this amazing resource that has been wonderful for us and has been wonderful for the folks we're working with.
Yeah. Why do you think people haven't been accessing private money?
A couple reasons. One, because unfortunately there are uh, an abundance of horror stories on both sides. People who have lent private money and people who have borrowed or tried to borrow private money.
Mm.
In the case of lending, uh, it's almost a cliche to hear about deals that went bad. Um, I lent the money and they squandered it, or I lent the money and we had to foreclose, or I lent the money and I never heard back from them. And
Mhm.
um, on the borrow side, you hear the horror stories. They said that they could get me money and they took my $3,000 and I never heard back from them. Or they said they were going to get me money and it took them 6 months to give me an answer. And so it has gotten, because it's largely unregulated, it has a lot of bad actors out there.
Mm.
And unfortunately, there's so little understanding of how, forget private money, about how money works in general, how borrowed funds work, that there are a lot of easily scammable people out there. When you have a large community of easily scammable people, you're going to get scammers. And
Yep.
so that is, and then the tales of the scammers and the scammed travel faster than the tales of the successes. And so it's, oh, did you hear what happened to John? Did you hear what happened to Mary? Oh, I'm never going to do that. That must be risky and dangerous. And it's heartbreaking because the very people who need this most are the ones who are terrified of trying to actually do it or who are scammed out of their socks when they try.
Mhm.
And so I've been spending a considerable amount of time and energy trying to help educate those folks on how it should work, how it can work. Because when it works well, as in the case, as in our case, it's paradise. You can't even compare accessing private money and working with a private lender to working with a bank or a hard money lender. They're not even in the same category in terms of speed, transparency, and relationship.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be my questions. Like, what is the difference? And I guess, how did you, since you guys were investing, what made you kind of pivot into private money? What was the project, or how did you go about it? And then what were the, if you can remember, those details that made private money so much easier than going with the banks or even a hard money loan?
Yeah, at the time when we got started back in 1999, we weren't lendable. We had just bought a condo in Smyrna, Georgia, and so we weren't in a position to borrow any more money from a bank. And So we didn't have a big pile of cash we could draw from. So if we were going to do any kind of investing, it was going to need to be creative, which involved, of course, subject to
Mhm.
and seller financing, but also working with folks who have funds that they're looking to put to work, which is private lending. So that fell into the category of creative, if you will.
Mhm.
That was right up our alley because at the time we needed that. I didn't appreciate at the time how much better this was than going to a bank. And I think most investors most people walking this earth assume that if you want to buy real estate, you go get a loan from a bank.
Yep.
That's the default. And there's nothing, well, there's many things wrong with that, but there's nothing weird about that. It's
Mhm.
just that is the default, and everybody understands that that's what you do. So many people don't understand that that's not the only way that you can buy a house, that there are other ways, and that for investors for whom speed is often of critical importance,
Mhm.
waiting a month and a half for a bank to get you a loan is just isn't acceptable. And
Mhm.
so the main reason why we have such success with investors and the thing that we get out of it ourselves is that a private individual can make a decision in not months, not weeks, not even days, hours.
Mhm.
And in theory, we have closed, in fact, in practical fact, we've closed as fast as 4 days. There's not a bank on earth that can close a loan in 4 days.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and so when you're competing with other prospective buyers who are buying cash, you can't roll up with oh, I'll close in 30 days. This is not, I mean, you can try that, but you're not going to get your offer accepted. But if you can
Mhm.
go to the seller and say, look, I can close this thing in 4 days or 5 days, then you look like everybody else that's buying cash, and it gives you a competitive advantage if you're an investor. And that's what we used ourselves, and that's what we want to give to our clients when we work with them.
Mhm.
So speed is probably the number one factor in the difference between private money versus hard money or funding. Those take weeks to months. This takes days.
Wow. And so I guess a part of that too, I would love to hear more about your investing kind of I guess journey, and it sounds like you don't actively invest anymore, and that you're more helping other people invest and grow their portfolios or their flips while also helping more private money lenders know where to put their money. So you're kind of connecting both of them, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Our we got our start, as I mentioned, in Metro Atlanta in 1999, and our focus was buying, holding, renting,
Mm.
specifically lease purchase, and typically buying with seller financing or subject to, and making those homes available to folks who couldn't qualify for a mortgage currently, but were wanting to at some point down the road buy a house. So we typically used lease purchase as our disposition strategy to give them a year, two, maybe three to get in position to qualify for a mortgage, at which
Yeah.
point they would buy the property from us, we'd sell it to them, they go off and be a homeowner, we go do it again.
Mm.
And it's not that we abandoned that approach. It's just that in 2018, in 2018, we sold the bulk of our rental portfolio, and for that matter, our personal residence,
Right.
because we wanted to do the digital nomad thing. So we started,
Mm.
this was July of 2018. We sold our house and we were starting to sell off our portfolio. Then, unfortunately, in August of 2018, my wife's mom suffered a massive stroke. And so while she did not die, she lost the ability to speak, to feed herself, and to move. So it required us to give her 24-hour care, which we
Mm.
did for the next 2.5 years. And since at the time we were managing our properties ourselves, there was just no way we could continue to try and acquire a rental property and uh, um, care for her mom.
Yeah.
So the premise was we would stop being active investors, or the idea was we'd stop being active investors and transition to something that required a little less hands-on care. This was 2018. We cared for her until 2021 when she passed away, and then 2021-ish, maybe 2020, 2021 is when I started making the transition from focusing on investing to focusing on helping other folks get access to capital, because that's another uh, business model that doesn't require me to physically be on hands-on. I
Yeah.
can I can integrate the buying and the selling. I can fund without ever having to see the property or be at the work site, and it suited my lifestyle. So
Mhm.
we made that transition, but I'm still an active investor. We are actually in the process of restocking. We sold everything in 2018. Now is an incredible buying opportunity, and we are actively looking for properties that we can keep ourselves.
Mhm.
These days, I'd probably shift. I'd favor midterm rentals versus long-term rentals or lease purchase. And because as digital nomads, we're the client. We use midterm rentals. We're typically someplace for 2, 3, 4 months at a time. So I understand that model far better than I did in 2018, and I see the opportunities for that model for offering funded. Fully
Furnished.
um, furnished. Thank you. Real estate for folks who are looking to stay in place for a month or two or three, and but we can talk about that later. But that's so that I'm still actively looking to invest, but my day job, if you will, is helping folks get access to capital because, for me at least, and I hate to admit this, but it's pretty easy and it's fun. It's enjoyable because so many people don't have an appreciation for just how powerful it can be, and honestly, just how much money is out there. And when I hear
Mhm.
people talk about, oh, it's hard to get funding, I have no idea what they're talking about because
Yeah.
there's an ocean of funding out there, and that's just U.S. based funding. If you start looking worldwide, there's no end of money out there desperately looking for places to land that can give the kind of returns that private money can deliver, typically
Mhm.
12% or better. So
Yeah.
it's not hard to find people who aren't getting 12% right now and offer them to get 12%, and you've now just got a customer. So it's an easy sell, uh, in my opinion.
Yeah, something that I was looking into sometime last year was wrap loans. Have you heard about those?
Say more. I'm not sure what you mean.
So, a wrap loan, essentially, the way that I understand it was you have a borrower, you have an investor or an operator, and they need money. And so you say, okay, I can lend you, funds, $100,000 at 15% for 2 points. And then let's say you come back to your investors and say, hey, we have an opportunity for $100,000. I'll give you 12%. And then that's it. And so you're kind of wrapping their loan with the initial loan. And then you're making the delta there.
Yeah, certainly very doable. I have no business objection to that. Uh, I My preference. So, and you and I haven't talked about this, but I'll state it here. My preference is to transition more to a co-lending strategy with my fellow private lenders,
Hmm.
primarily because the challenge of the business model that I'm in right now is I make money on and you're probably in the same boat. We make money on the origination and points, but we don't get paid anything for the duration of the loan.
Yep.
And there's a couple ways to fix that. One is to wrap the financing. The challenge with wrapping is that it requires a little bit of and I don't want to get too technical in this, but a little bit of a leap of faith for the person who is uh, the the lender that's providing the funds,
Hmm.
because they are lending to me, or they're providing funds to me, and along with their funds, I'm wrapping that and making it available to the um, to the operator.
Hmm.
It is a structure that we've used before. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just for me a little cleaner to do a co-lending, and the same results can be achieved. So let's say you were lending, the operator needs $100,000, and you've got um, $2,000 in your pocket, and you find a lender that's got $98,000. You can do a co-lending arrangement, and you can split the interest. You can get more of the interest than less. You can control in the promissory note how you're going to get paid. You can treat that loan agreement like a big pool of resources that can be split however you and they agree. and it only lasts for the duration of that note. So it's not, you're not forming an LLC that you have to now manage in perpetuity. You've got a one-time deal that you can put all the details that you want into that note. It's a
Yeah.
single note. It's not a first and a second, and you can handle all the specifics of who gets what and where that way. I'm a little more inclined to that one only because I don't want to be and I hate to use this terminology, but I don't want to be a point shaver. I don't want to be I'm getting 14, but I'm going to give you 12. I'd much rather be let's go get more deals and we
Yep.
can both participate in the 12, and I'll get cash flow, you get cash flow, and we'll take it that way. So again, it's not a question of right or wrong. It's just how you pitch it. And for me, it's easier to pitch co-lending than it is the wrap. But both, I mean, they achieve the same thing
Mhm.
effectively, but from a math standpoint. And you can make one look exactly like the other. But the co-lending seems to me a bit more collaborative, and I'm partnering with my lender as opposed to, I hate to say preying upon, taking advantage of, that's harsh, rather than leveraging their funding.
Mhm.
But again, it's not there's nothing wrong with that strategy. We've used wraps extensively, but it is, in my opinion, not as effective or not as desirable for me as a co-lending arrangement. I'll be driving toward that more in the future because it solves a few other problems as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea that you can work with your lender is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah. Well, and then I love how you talked about the collaborative spirit. And I think that's why so many people, when they work with you, they continue to work with you, not just lenders that are obviously working with you and, getting their returns, but then also operators. I mean, we've already seen um, operators that are starting to repeat business with you. And I think it's because everybody can really feel that collaborative spirit. Like it really doesn't feel like, what can we get away with? It's more of like, okay, well, these are our terms, but let's see how we can work with you, and let's see how we can make this deal work. And I think people really feel that, and especially when you're talking about that, the speed and the efficiency, you've definitely put in the work to make it as efficient as possible. I mean, we closed Tracy's deal during the holidays, Christmas and New Year's. We closed it on New Year's Eve. That was crazy.
And it was a win for her.
Yep.
It was a win for the seller. It was a win for, I mean, everybody won.
Yep.
And the pie is so incredibly large that I don't feel the need to compete with other people for a slice of it.
Mhm.
There's plenty for everybody, and for me, it's a lot more enjoyable to collaborate than compete. I tell people that other private lenders are not my competition. Our competition collectively is ignorance and apathy and all those other things, all those reasons why people don't use private money.
Mhm.
I'm not threatened by other people who are lending. I need those folks because there's some deals that we just either can't fund or don't want to fund or not in a position to fund. And I want to see the deal get funded. And so I'm happy to introduce them to someone who can fund the deal. It doesn't detract at all from what I'm doing. So I don't understand folks who are afraid to share who their I just had this conversation with a couple of people a few weeks ago, a few days ago, actually, afraid to share their clients. I posted on Bigger Pockets in the last 12 months that I believe that a lot of the shenanigans that go in the lending business would go away if lenders would be comfortable giving references. Hey, here are the
Mhm.
last four people that I worked with. And I thought that was pretty common sense and safe. Oh, I got beaten up horribly on Bigger Pockets by experienced people,
Wow.
by experienced lenders who are like, I'm not giving up my client list, and I'm not gonna. And I'm like, dude, I'm not asking you to give up anything. I'm just simply saying, give me a name and a number of someone that I can call who's worked with you in the last, I don't know, 2, 3 months that
Mhm.
can tell me what it's like to work with you. And it was not, it did not go over well. Let's put it that way. I think I think the concern was if I tell you who I'm lending to, gosh, you may steal them away from me.
Mhm.
And to me, that's like saying, if I let my wife talk to other men, they may steal her away. And is it possible? Yes. But if I'm doing my job right, she's not going anywhere.
Mhm.
And similarly, if she's doing her job right, which she definitely is, I can certainly interact with other people without having her have to worry about me being stolen away.
Mhm.
So my clients, I tell them up front, this is a marketplace. I'm not the only person that's offering funding. However, my goal is to be the best at offering funding. And
Mhm.
yes, the points that we charge are higher than the market. And I'm fine with that because I believe I give a higher quality service than the market, than
Yep.
most of the market that I see out there. And if I'm wrong, then I'll lose clients. And if I'm
Mhm.
right, then I'll keep them. And so far I've kept the ones that I've gotten, and I'm getting more. So I'm okay with, and I'm not for everybody. And I recognize that the service that I provide isn't necessary, isn't needed by everybody. If you
Mhm.
can wait a month and a half to get your loans closed, then the speed that I offer isn't of any value to you.
Mhm.
And I'm okay with that. And I recognize that there will be people out there who will do things that I don't want to do or can't do. So I'm fine with that. But for the niche that I'm in, my goal is to be the fastest, the most transparent, and give the best relationship or allow for the best relationships. And if I can achieve those three things for the audience that I'm trying to reach, that's what matters to them. And it's not everybody, but for those folks, that's the winning combination. And so I'm fine with that, and that gives me enough business to stay busy and keep a roof over our head. So for me, again, I'm not trying to compete on the basis of lowest points because that's a race to the bottom that nobody wins.
Yep.
And this stuff, as you and I both know, it takes time and effort and energy to get loans closed, considerable amount of all of those things. And so the lenders and the operators that we work with need us to be financially okay for us to deliver the kind of services that they ask us for.
Yeah.
And so those folks those folks aren't the ones who are complaining. It's people that hear about what I'm offering who say, "Oh, that's really high." I'm like, "Well, maybe for you it is, but for the people that we're working with, they're more than happy to pay that." And if I'm not worth it, then the market will tell me that, and I'll have to drop my prices. But so far, I haven't had any complaints.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think you bring up a lot of great points too. The point that I do want to focus on is what you just said, where some people may say, "Oh, your points are really high, or your origination is really high," and you're like, "Well, yes, so that I can live the way I live, so that I can help you. Like the more money I make, the more money you make." And so, could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because I feel like everybody wants a good deal, and everybody definitely negotiates, and more as I'm also in the lending field and the DSCR loans, I get a lot of people who try to negotiate our fees, and I totally get. I'm not offended by it at all. I mean, I definitely makes sense to me, but that's something that I don't know how to yet articulate the way that I think you put it.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and I it's fair to say that I've arrived at this place having tried some of the other alternatives. I've tried negotiating on the basis of price, and it just doesn't work. And I think actually it was Alex Ramosi. There's
Mm,
a video that he has that talks about the I think it's the wine bottle example, and he talks about how the same bottle of wine, if the price is higher, people actually enjoy it more.
hmm
And I thought that was kind of interesting. But I guess the bigger point that I would make is that because I'm not trying to reach everyone, I don't need everyone to get the value that I offer, but I do want to be very specific and clear on what that value is. And I think if you are specific and clear about what that value is, then people will self-select, oh, this is important to me, or this is not so important to me. So if you value speed and transparency and relationship, then we should talk. If
hmm
those things are not of any particular significance to you, then I'm not going to be your guy. And I'm
Yep.
okay with that. But the folks who want the cheaper price, along with that, I mean, there are plenty of folks out there who will offer to fund deals for a low price, but it takes you 3 weeks to get an answer back, and it takes you, a month to get a commitment, and then sometimes, and I've heard the horror stories, the day before closing, you get the phone call. Oh, sorry, we can't do it. Sorry, something came up. We can't make it happen.
Yep.
With me and with our team, we're going to get it closed. If we say we're going to get it closed, we're going to get it closed. We're going to move heaven and earth to make sure that we can.
hmm
And again, for some people that's really important, and for some people they're not. It doesn't matter as much to them. And I don't get to decide what's important to the customer, but I do get to decide, or I do get to be clear on what it is, what value I'm offering, so they can decide for themselves if this is important or not. I
Mhm.
use the car metaphor. People understand what Toyota offers. People
Mhm.
understand what Mercedes-Benz offers. They both offer something of value to their client base, but the price points are very different.
Yeah.
And it would be silly to go into a Mercedes dealership and say, "Hey, why can't I get the same price as my Toyota?" Because it's a different. You're buying a different product.
Mm.
And similarly, for those people who want to pay the bare minimum in points, I'm sure there's someone out there who can help them. But they're not going. I know they're not going to be able to deliver. Excuse me, the kind of service that you and I would like to deliver, because at least not for very long. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
do it for a month or two, but eventually they're gonna drive themselves out of business. And that was the aha for me, is that when you race to the bottom, eventually when you hit the bottom, you're out of business. You're not
Mhm.
making any money, and then you have to stop doing it. What I'm doing is sustainable, and I want to make it really clear here that when I say that we are a premium offering, we're not twice what other people are charging.
Yeah.
And what annoys me as an investor, sorry, as an operator myself,
Mhm.
is I've seen the term sheets of some of these other companies, and I looked at the fine print, and I'm like, dude, you're paying. Yes, they're claiming 2 points, 2 origination points, but then there's this 5 or 6 or other junk fees that they're throwing on there that they're not calling origination points, that are mandatory. And if it's
Mhm.
a mandatory fee, that can only I can't get a loan without that fee, that's an origination cost. You
Yep.
can call it whatever you want to, but it's still origination cost. And so for me, I would much rather treat my operators and my lenders like adults, and be upfront with them about what the charges are going to be, what the fees will be, knowing that once I say it's going to be whatever it is, there's not going to be any fine print.
Mhm.
And for some people that's important. For some people, they don't mind as much being nickel and dimed. And it's a philosophical thing. But for me, as an investor, I hated that. That was the one thing that would get you banned from my universe, is this is the cost, and then 2 weeks later, oh, and by the way, there's this, and oh, you wanted wheels on that car, and you wanted a bag for those groceries.
Yep.
I'm like, look, just charge me what you're going to charge me. Let me run my numbers based on what it's actually going to cost me,
Mhm.
and don't come back 2 weeks later and 2 weeks after that with your hand out every single time, because that's going to ruin the relationship. And so I don't want to be treated that way. And so I'm marketing this toward people like me, the engineers, the left brain folks or right brain folks, whichever, the technical folks who don't want to have that conversation more than once.
Mhm.
Tell me what's going to cost, put it in my spreadsheet, and then we're good to go.
Yeah.
And so it's not important for everybody, but it is important for people like me, and those people respond well to it. And so that's why I do it, and it's why there is a marketplace, because there's room for all of us. Some
Mhm.
people could care less about that, and they're fine with, a race to the bottom and using up um, loan sources or funding sources and having a new one every time. Some people like the idea of consistency and being able to work with the same person over and over again.
Yep.
That's what I want, because in my mind, as a lender, my risk goes down the more deals we do together. Doesn't
Mhm.
go away, but it certainly goes down, because now I start to learn how you operate, you start to learn how I operate. We can anticipate each other's moves, and it's easier. It's like dancing. You get better at it when you've been with the same partner for a longer period of time. And not that you can't make it work with someone the first time out, but the 15th time out is way smoother, and you can just see it when you're interacting. And so that's the kind of relationship that I'm looking for. I'm looking for folks that we can work with for the long term. And fortunately, knock on wood, we've had some success. We've got some clients we work with. We're on their like 10th loan. And I love
Wow.
that. I love being able to have that, because now we can get past the initial discomfort and kind of get to the good stuff. And also, it's worth pointing out that while I do, while I do lending, I'm still an investor at heart. So I'm really trying to make deals happen. I mean, the
Mhm.
lending is a part of it, but it's not the only part of it. If I can help you structure the deal better, I at
Mhm.
least give my feedback on it. And if you take the advice, great. If not, I won't be offended. But I'm looking for ways that we can all be more successful. And lending is only a portion of that, but it's a portion that I can bring to the table. So I like the idea that I can bring the lending and the investing experience and the network and all these other things together to get more deals done.
Yeah. All about relationship. I love that. That's fantastic.
Entirely.
Yeah. And
Entirely.
and so So we know you're the money man. You can lend the money. You can help people look at their deals and how to structure it. You're trying to be transparent, or you are transparent with any fees and stuff. There's no hidden costs, and I know this because we've worked together as well. So, what are the deals that you lend on? There are a lot of people that will come to me and ask for gap funding and ask for maybe just funding to acquire property. So, what exactly if somebody said, or if somebody is thinking, I'm watching this, I love everything that Mitch is saying, I would love to work with him, what kind of deal would you say yes to?
Got it. So our two most frequent funding deals are someone buys property, someone fixes it up, someone sells it to a retail buyer some point down the road. So buy, fix, flip. The other is buy, fix, hold. Buy
Mhm.
it, fix it, put a tenant in it, refinance out into a DSCR loan, typically, usually with your help, and pays off the private lender. So those are our probably most popular uh, case studies, if you will, or cases, use cases for this kind of funding. But truth be told, we will consider anything that involves actual real estate, so not mobile homes that are personal property, for example, but if it's real estate and it's income generating, cash flow generating, so not raw land, because that's speculative. It's not producing any cash flow. It can't produce any cash flow until you do something to it, unless it's
Mhm.
a parking lot. And so, not raw land, not mobile homes that are personal property. But if it's real estate and it's cash flow generating, or at least potential for cash flow generation, then we're interested at least in seeing how it works, provided that, and this is the big proviso, we prefer to be in the first position.
Mhm.
So if you have, and we talked about this for subject two, if you're buying a property subject two, it's $140,000 mortgage, it's worth 200, tons of equity, but we would be less excited to lend on that because we're sitting on top of $140,000 first. And again, we've done this ourselves as investors, but we understand that it's a risky place to be as the lender because if I don't pay, or whoever is responsible for paying that underlying first doesn't pay it, I'm going to get wiped out as a second. And so
Mhm.
it requires a bit more management. Not that it can't be done, it's just it requires a bit more effort. And so for us, it's a tougher, it's more work than we prefer. The first two use cases are pretty straightforward, and because we're in the first position, and because we're managing or at least managing is probably harsh, but we are at least we have visibility into the rehab work that's being done before
Mhm.
it's either sold to a retail buyer or rented. We feel like we have a bit more control. We're typically offering the funds on draws, so we get to control how much is going out at any given time, and it's usually short term. It's 6 months or less. With Gap, there's lots of question marks, and this could happen and that can happen. And the big thing that can happen that we all know is a risk for subject to is a loan can get called.
Mhm.
And it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And if that happens, now again, we're in a position where we're sitting behind a first that's potentially on its way to foreclosure, and we don't want to have to be stuck in that situation. So there are probably other creative ways to address that. So I would be willing to consider those kinds of situations, but it probably wouldn't be as a second mortgage on top of that subject to first. I'm looking at a deal right now for a property that's seller financed. They paid 115 a year ago. They think it'll be worth like 280, maybe 300,000 when it's all renovated, and they bought it contract for deed. Well, contract for deed means that not only are we not a first, uh, they don't even actually have the deed. The person
Mhm.
who's trying to come to us with the funding doesn't even have the deed yet,
Yeah.
and so it's particularly unappealing. But that could potentially be changed. We could potentially perfect that into a first and a second, and maybe we could convince that seller to take the second position and let us
Yeah.
take the first position. We could um, subordinate their debt to ours, and that might be interesting. Now, a bank's never going to do that, but a private individual might. We've had situations before where we've been able to subordinate that. So that kind of creativity, again, you're not typically going to get from your average hard money lender.
Mhm.
It's not cookie cutter, but because I've been doing this for a while and I've got a fair amount of experience, we may be able to make something happen there. But your standard gap financing, I borrowed the money for the acquisition, and now I need to borrow the money for the rehab. That's less than exciting for us because we can, unless we're getting massive returns, we can get 12% without doing any of that risky stuff. And so there's not a huge benefit to being in that position um, if we don't have to be.
Mhm. Okay, cool.
Does that make
So
sense? Oh, and anything. I just want to be clear. I want to make sure I rehash
mhm,
this. It's got to be a cash flowing asset. It's got to be real property, and we'd like to be in the first position. If it falls into those three categories, first position, real property, and cash flowing asset, then we're at least interested in looking at it and seeing if we can make something happen.
now I didn't hear you say anything about residential. So are you looking into multifamily or commercial as well?
Yeah, we're looking at multifamily and commercial. We've done some small multifamily, duplexes, triplexes. We would be open to larger. I mean, as you know, the math is the same, whether it's a 2 unit or a 20 unit.
Mhm,
And it's a bit more sophisticated, but at the end of the day, you're just trying to make sure that you're protecting yourself as a lender and
mhm.
that there's cash flow there to cover your debt service and more. So yeah, we're open to residential. We're open to multifamily, commercial. We've looked at warehouse, self storage. All of that is fair game. But and we haven't talked about this. I am looking to work with experienced operators, and by experienced, I mean you've got to have at least one successful deal under your belt,
Mhm.
because this is serious business with other people's money, just to be blunt. And not that banks are any less concerned about losing money, but for here, it's you can actually see the person whose money you're going to be taking and
Yep.
and hopefully giving back. And it's not they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it because they need this money to live off of and to build a future for themselves and their family. And so I want people who take that responsibility seriously and can demonstrate some level of confidence that they've done this before at least once. And I don't think that's a lot to ask. And so once you get past your first deal, then by all means, we're definitely interested in hearing what you have to say. And in fact, if you haven't done your first deal yet, I'm still happy to talk you through what you'll need to have, because I want to make sure that you do the right things to set yourself up for working with someone like me down the road. A lot of folks do that first rehab, and they take no before and after pictures. They do none of the things that would help them document the success that they had, so that when they do talk to a lender, they can present it in the best possible light. They're so excited to get a deal, they just do it all, and they don't get any credit for it.
Yep.
It's kind of like I was telling somebody a couple of days ago about I'm not a very good pool player. So when I break at the beginning of a pool game and a ball goes in, it's as much of a surprise to me as it is to anybody else at the table. There are people who are actually good at pool who can tell you that ball's going to go here, that ball's going to go there, and that always amazes me that they can do that. But that's way more impressive than just hitting it and having balls go in the pockets. To be able to call it in advance and
Yep.
then have it happen. And so I tell people, don't waste your opportunity to tell people, hey, look, here's what we did, or here's what we're doing, and here's how it's going to end up. And then 6 months later, you actually can say, hey, remember that deal I was talking about? We completed it. Here were the before pictures and the after pictures, and here's how much money we made. And that will impress me. And
Mhm.
if that's your first deal, I'm excited to be your second, to help you fund your second. If you don't give me all that stuff and you still have the success, but you can't communicate it to me, it's not nearly as great. You don't have the story. You have the end result and you have the money in your pocket, but you don't have the story. You don't have the documentation that can show you. If you don't have the photo, it didn't happen. If you don't have the proof, it's not as effective as if you have it in advance. So I try to warn people in advance for that first deal. Document everything just for your
Mhm.
own benefit, because it'll be nice to have that when 10 years from now when you've forgotten
Right.
what it's like to be a beginner. But document everything so that when you do talk to a lender, they can follow along with you with what you've done and kind of appreciate the progress that you've made.
Mm, that's awesome. Cool. So, what else is there anything else that you wanna mention that you think people should know about you and your processes or what you're looking for?
Um, I will say that it's important that people understand that no lender makes a dime saying no.
Mm,
I think some people think that we get some sort of perverse joy out of denying them the loan when we would love to say yes to everything, but we understand the reality is that if if you ask for funding that you're really not ready for, the worst case scenario is not that you don't get it. The worst case scenario is that you do, and you
mm,
mess up all those relationships for all eternity. So my job is to protect you as much as I'm protecting me. My no is just as much of a protection for you as it is for me, because I'm not saying no for just because it's fun. I'm saying no because I don't think you've thought this through well enough, and that you're not. I don't think you're going to get the results that you want. And 6 months from now, when we have to foreclose on you, it's going to be a horrible situation for everybody involved. And I'd like to avoid all that.
yeah.
And I think sometimes people forget that there's no win for us in saying no. We don't like saying no. But if you give us deals that don't make any financial sense, if you give us comps that are cherry picked and inaccurate, if you give us no evidence that this is going to actually make any money, we're doing you a favor. It may not feel like it, but we're doing you a favor by saying no. And I'll usually tell people why
Yeah.
we can't do their deal. But having said why, it's not an invitation to ask harder, because either the deal makes sense or it doesn't. The cool thing about what we do for a living is that it's driven largely by the numbers.
Mm,
If I were buying houses, I'm not the kind of guy that you want to have to design your house to be suitable for an owner occupant. I don't have that muscle. But buying a house that's going to make you money, that's going to cash flow for you, yeah, that's right up my alley. And it's just math. And
yeah.
I didn't invent the math. It is what it is. And so someone showed me a deal a couple of days ago, and it was like, I'm like, what do you see the cash on cash return on this? And he ran the numbers, it's like 2.4%. I'm like, okay, if it's 2.4%, rather than doing this deal, you just give me your money and I'll give you 12% guaranteed or
Yeah.
almost guaranteed. That I wouldn't do a deal for 2.4% cash on cash return. Why? Why would you ever do that?
It's
You
awful.
could put it in the bank and earn better than that.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't run the numbers, and again, I say, it's funny that I say this. I say this as the guy who, I'm the poster child for not running your numbers. So
Mm,
when we started investing in 1999, I did not run our numbers. That was the reason why we got crushed in 2007 is twofold. But the number one reason is that I did not know my numbers. And
mm,
so they say there's no convert like a zealot, no zealot like a convert. That's me. I did everything wrong. So when I tell people about knowing your numbers and analyzing deals, it's not because I've been doing it right for all these years. It's because I did it wrong for many, many, many years, and I paid the price for it. So
mm,
I know what happens when people put deals out there and you ask them, hey, what's the return on this? And they look at you like deer in headlights, like I have no idea what you're talking about. They sold it, they have it listed for 100, and I'm buying it for $20,000 less. So that must be a great deal, right? It's like, that's not how it works. Um, and so for me to say, hey, your math isn't mathing, it's not, I get no joy out of that. I wish someone had sat, I'm sure someone tried to sit me down and say, look, dude, in 2006, your
mm.
spread, your cash flow is razor thin. If the market shifts even slightly downwards, you're going to be underwater. If I
Yeah.
had known that, or if I had realized that, we could have changed course. We did
Mhm.
not realize that. So when 2007 and 8 hit, and Atlanta rents went down 20%, and property values went down 25%, we found ourselves very quickly underwater, severely underwater,
Yeah.
and negative cash flowing. And that's not such a big deal if you get one or two. If you got 35 properties and you're negatively cash flowing a couple $100 per property, you go under really, really quickly, really, really painfully. And so, but the math today is the same as the math back then. The calculation for cash and cash return is no different today than it was in 2007. There was
Mm,
nothing that stopped me from doing it. I have a engineering degree from MIT, for Pete's sake. I have no excuse. The math was not scary, and yet I did not do it. And so
mhm.
again, I throw myself under the bus all the time because even with all those credentials, I still didn't do it because I didn't
Yeah.
understand the importance of it. And when the market's hot, you don't need to run the numbers,
Mm,
but the markets don't stay hot forever. And when they shift, that's why people get crushed because they had no idea. We had no idea that we were skating on such thin ice until it broke, and then we were in a world of hurt.
Mhm.
So I don't get
Well,
any joy telling people their deals don't work, but I want them to understand why they don't work and how they can do the math to show themselves that it doesn't work. I'm not making this stuff up. People want to, argue with me about the numbers. I'm like, well, you tell me what you get as the cash on cash return and as
yeah.
the DSCR. And if you get different numbers, then I'll be quiet. But the math is the math.
Yeah. Well, then a part of that too that I think is helpful, and again goes back to the collaboration and relationship, is that you are saying, I'm willing to run the numbers with you. So whether you've done one deal or whether you've done five, it's always helpful to have a second set of eyes on things. And I like that you're opening it up for those exact people, saying, hey, if it's going to be a deal, cool. If it's not going to be a deal, cool. But let's run through it together. And at least, I haven't been the most perfect at it, but let's try to help you get better at that.
And everybody can get, there's no there of deal analysis. There's always another level.
Mm,
You do it for a while, and then you do it cash, and then someone says, "Hey, have you ever tried financing?" And you go, "Oh, wow, financing, the whole new thing." And then you do financing, and then someone says, "Hey, did you realize that you can do this with owner financing?" And so there's always something else that you can add.
yeah.
But if you don't have the fundamentals, none of that stuff makes sense. And I see people getting excited about doing, for example, subject to deals. And I'm like, have you ever done a cash deal? How would this thing pan out if you just bought it cash?
Mm-hmm.
What would those numbers be? How do you know this is a better thing? Because the painful lesson that we had to learn is that just because it's subject to doesn't mean it's a good deal. There are plenty of deals that we did subject to that were awful deals.
Yeah.
Just because someone's willing to give you the mortgage or hand over the keys to the car doesn't mean it's a good car.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to do the analysis is what saves you. And in my opinion, it's what defines us as investors, for those of us who claim to be investors. It's
Yeah.
not how much money you have in your pocket. That doesn't make you an investor. It's your ability to analyze the deal, to uncover its strengths and weaknesses, hopefully minimize the weaknesses, increase the strengths, and go forward to actually get that deal done. That's what makes us an investor. And so I'm not impressed by people. I mean, we see right now in this market that we have today, there are people who have been, I think I've said this before, maybe to you, there are people who have been doing this for 10 years and have never seen a down market ever in their entire lives. And they think that's normal. And I can't blame them. But those of us who've been around for a couple of decades know that there's a cycle to this.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start hearing people say things like, oh, of course it's going to go up next year, it always goes up. Or, oh, don't worry about the negative cash flow. The appreciation will bail you out. When I start hearing that, I'm like, oh, it's that time. I didn't realize it was that time already. And
Yep.
that means it's time for a reckoning. And I've seen what happens to people who ignore cash flow in favor of this mythical, magical appreciation, which you can neither eat nor taste nor touch, and which
Mm-hmm.
can go away as it did in Atlanta overnight.
Ooh.
It's nice to have it, but you can't bank on it. And if you're building your business on some future appreciation, then you're building your castle on sand. So, and again, I'm not saying this because I've done it all right. I'm saying it because I did it wrong, and I suffer the consequences of that. So I know from whence I speak because I've paid the price of getting it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to spare people that pain. And it should be, as investors, we should want to run the numbers. I mean, I love running numbers. It's because it confirms for me that I've got something there, or that at least it gives me an idea how I can make things better.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can see the formula, I can see how it plays out, I can see the spreadsheet. And so for me, not running the numbers is purely speculation. You're gambling, and yes, you'll win sometimes, but eventually your luck's going to run out, and
Yeah.
it's never pretty when that happens,
Yeah.
and it's avoidable, completely avoidable.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, where can people find you? Like, what are you looking for? What are you looking to give others?
So what I would love is for the folks who are operators or wanting to be operators, which is to say, investors looking to either buy and hold or fix and flip, but to make money in this game of real estate, who are serious about doing this for the long term. I would love to help those people, to introduce those people to the wonders of private money,
Mm.
and more importantly, the steps leading up to that, or any other money for that matter, which is the deal analysis, the relationship building, all the pieces that you need to be successful, because they're all tied together. I mean, there's no surprise that I'm such a big relationship person,
Yeah.
uh, because relationship is what saved us when we when we were in dire straits over the last 20 years. Relationships are what relationships is how you and I worked together on the deals we worked together on.
Mhm.
Relationships are how most of the deals that I'm doing now, how I found those deals. And so I'm a huge fan of networking and relationship building. And I do believe that iron sharpens iron. I think that the people that you hang out with are your destiny.
Mhm.
And so I want to be around people who are looking at bigger, better, and more interesting deals and learning more things about how those deals operate. And I'd love to be that for people who are just getting started, to get them in and among people who are doing deals, because it shouldn't be as scary as it is. And it's the fear goes away once you can back it up with the math, at least for me.
Yeah.
Once you can see on paper, oh, this is a, once you see 12% cash on cash return and it's legitimate, your worries and anxieties kind of go away. Once you see
Mhm.
that you can make money on that flip, or you can make money on that rental property, then the question is, how fast can I get the financing for this?
Mhm.
And when I hear people say, "Oh, there's money's hard to get," or "There's not a lot of money out there," I'm like, for the right deals, there's more than an abundance of money. I tell
Mm.
people all the time that the it's not true. The saying used to be that if you found a great deal, the money would find you. And I say that's not entirely true. That's almost true. If you find a great deal, the money will find you if you know how to speak its language.
Mhm.
And learning how to speak the language of money is the piece that most people don't. It's the piece that I didn't have when I first got started. It's the piece that most people don't have, and it's what makes this so hit or miss, because they're not really sure if the deal makes sense. Well,
Yeah.
I want people to be sure. I want them to come to me with a deal that's so solid that they don't have to wonder, is it going to make sense to me from an underwriting standpoint, because they've underwritten it 15 different ways, and all those ways show that they make money.
Yeah.
If you bring me a deal like that, I can't wait to fund it. But I rarely get that. I usually get people who bring me deals and there's hardly any underwriting. And I do a
Mhm.
little bit of poking at their comps or at their underlying numbers, and it falls apart. And then I'm thinking to myself, if someone actually did fund this deal, it would be a disaster 6 months from
Mhm.
now for everybody involved. So thank goodness I'm not going to be involved in that disaster. But wouldn't you want to know in advance if this is going to make sense or not? I would think I'd sleep a lot easier knowing that my deal absolutely makes sense, and that I've got 4 or 5 other different ways. Sorry, I just want to make sure that my power doesn't go out. Four or 5 other different ways to make that deal work. I just lost my light. That's okay. So yeah, I'm looking for people who are serious real estate investors, who are good, who are trying to understand how to speak the language of money such that they can get access to, and frankly, when you speak the language of money, you can get access to private money, hard money, bank financing, all that stuff is
Yeah.
possible. And if you
Yeah.
can't speak the language of money, none of those things are possible. So for me, finishing school around how money works and thinks and operates and behaves is really what the Unfundable AF is all about. It's really, I mean, the private money happens to be my focus, but money is money. It responds to the same rules and guidelines as other types of money. And I'd love to see people understand it better and use
Mhm.
it wiser.
Mhm.
And if I can have a role in helping them get to that level of skill, that'd be wonderful.
I love it. And how can they reach out to you? How can they find out or work with you?
So the best way to reach me, believe it or not, so I got locked out of my Facebook account like 6 months ago, and I've given up on Facebook now. So the best way to reach me is LinkedIn, um, and or to reach me directly, they can email me, they can call me, and if they are um, open to it for at least until we get to 1,000 members, I'm open to getting people into our school community. Um, if they qualify, at no cost. And in order to qualify, you just got to be serious. I don't want people who are going to waste their time or others. But if you're serious, I'll find a spot for you, and you can get amongst people who are getting funding and doing deals all over the world, and we can all help each other get better and smarter about stuff. There's plenty of areas that I am a novice in. We've got people in the community who are doing tiny homes. I know nothing about tiny homes, but I'm intrigued by tiny homes.
Mhm.
I'm intrigued by mobile home parks. I'm intrigued by possibly. I'm considering the possibility of a debt fund. Although the more I look at it, the less I'm excited about the idea of a
Yeah.
debt fund. But at any rate, there's so much stuff out there. I am intrigued by international private lending, because I think I may have commented before that in Mexico, for example, which is where I am right now, there is no, forget secondary market. There's no primary market for loans. If you want to buy a house and you don't have the cash, well, then you wait 20, 30 years until you do. Um,
Wow. That's
and so if
crazy.
you're it's crazy, and because they're building like crazy here, there's a tremendous opportunity for getting these folks access to capital. And if you think about how many people in the U.S. or how much money is sitting in the U.S. under earning in 401ks and IRAs and such, and how many of that money could be put to work in places like Mexico and Colombia and Peru and wherever,
Mhm.
it's a huge opportunity, but it requires a little bit of effort, and I'm not there yet. But my only point is that that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about, and that's what gets me excited. And I'd love to see more people taking that journey along with me.
Mhm. Yeah. So people can go to LinkedIn and go on to linkedin.com. I
Yep,
just have it on the
just
screen now, but
perfect. If they reach out to me on LinkedIn, if they connect with me on LinkedIn and just say, hey, I saw you on Data's Driven by Youth podcast, I will have a conversation with them, and if it looks like they're a good match, I'll invite them into the community, and we can start talking money. And they can be among other people who are doing deals and getting stuff done and making some impressive moves.
I love it. Thank you for coming on. This is fun. And
Oh, thanks for
I,
having me.
I want to also, it's not just thanks for coming on. I asked you to be here. You have been on me to like do more things and start my podcast again. So this is good. So thank you for all of the nudging and the pushing and like come on, let's do this together. Let's post together. Let's start getting more visible again. We can do it.
Well, there's a huge demand, as you no doubt know, for people who are transparent and upfront about how this whole thing works.
Mm,
And if we can demystify this so that people can access what they need responsibly, again, there'd be no, we would be set for life. And you have a gift that people that you can explain this to people in a way that they understand it, and as such, you need to be in on bigger stages with bigger audiences so that people can hear you, and that's just a matter of just time and focus. And
mhm.
so I applaud you for doing this podcast, and I encourage you to, and I'm sure you are looking to be guest speaking on other people's podcasts so you can get some exposure. I look forward to the day when I turn on CNBC and I see you talking about DSCR loans on that stage. But to me, that's what's kind of cool about this business is that it's good to have friends who are successful, and I want to see you succeed because it benefits you, and it doesn't hurt me either to have my successful friend Jada who's doing cool stuff. So yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I hope this was a benefit to your audience, and I would love to work with those folks. I am very much a relationship guy, and as I said before, all the good stuff in my life came about because of me putting myself out there and building relationships. So I hope they do reach out, and I would love to be a part of their lives and have them be a part of mine.
Thank you, Mitch.
Awesome, my pleasure.